You probably suck at making decisions and thinking in general. And that's not your fault. You're a human after all. You're not designed to be living in this complex world that we live in today. You have a certain set of rote programming that is built into your genes, built into your DNA through millions of years of evolution and through over 200,000 plus years as your ancestors dominated the food chain when they lived in the wild. Your biology is not designed for the modern world. 10,000 years since we've been farming and then cities and having money, personal property, all these things that are new in the past 10,000 years are just a blip on the actual timescale in evolutionary terms. Less than 1% of our entire time spent as hominids on this planet. Our bodies and brains have yet to adapt. And that's why most people do not think clearly, they do not think rationally, and they think emotionally, and they use these systems that were built for the wild when we lived in small tribes as hunter-gatherers, and they use those same thought patterns to think and act. And that's why we have so many problems today. Look at politics, divisiveness, us country versus that country, my border versus your border. These are all things built into our species and our tribalistic nature that kept our ancestors safe in the wild, because in the wild, other human groups were extremely dangerous if you didn't know them already. And so coming across another group with your group could potentially be a death sentence. So today I want to give you the mental model for thinking more clearly. These are a couple of the big first principles that can help you think clearer. They're also where you want to continually realign your focus and remind yourself of, because these are big first principles. There's other strategies that you can then add on top to get more results in thinking clearly and thinking analytically. But these are some of the things that you just can't ignore. And they almost seem counterintuitive. They seem like they wouldn't be responsible for helping you think more clearly, but they are the foundation. So like I said in the intro, you're not designed to think for a modern world. That's why certain outliers who think differently, who think long-term, who think counterintuitively, who use inversion to flip their thinking, to do things that aren't so obvious. We have humans that have done this that have become billionaires, top in their field, etc. They are probably a freak of nature because they weren't born and they had a certain environment growing up that made their thinking be conducive for being successful today. And so we have to try to learn from these people, but we don't need to become obsessed or focus on our shortcomings or try to basically copy somebody else. We need to find our own way and our own strategy. And there are some first principles that we can focus on to then be able to play to our strengths while also minimizing our weaknesses. So we have to first accept that we are humans and we are fallible. We have to let go of the ego and we have to accept that we're not always going to be right. In fact, most of the time we're going to be wrong. And when we can detach from the need to being right, we're going to be more likely to find what is right in a very paradoxical way. The more we cling to the things that we think are right, or we cling to the desire to wanting to know everything or wanting to be able to prepare for the unknown and remove as much of the fear of the future as possible, the more we do that, the further away we push it. So today, in a world that is constantly changing, you have to be willing to change and adapt and flow. And the more you resist change, the more nature is going to smack you around. Nature, economic systems, uncertain future, economies, none of that cares about your feelings or cares about your idea of morality or how things you think they should be. It doesn't care. The world is just going to do what it's going to do. Your best chance is to surf the wave rather than trying to fight the current. So the first way to do this is to go back to the Stoics. And I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favorite Stoic philosophers, my boy Epictetus. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Now, the reason this is integral for thinking clearly is because so much energy is spent on thinking about things that are not conducive and blaming other people, talking about what ifs, talking about hypotheticals. All of that is just mental masturbation. You can't do anything with it. It doesn't lead you in any direction. It's all maybes, what ifs, and as a result, your decisions are all maybes or what ifs. How do you make decisions with things you don't understand or know? How do you make decisions with things that are completely random? And people do this all the time. They try to plan for the things they think are going to happen. They make decisions based on that. They do say, feel, and think things, and then they just hope it works out. That's not a good strategy. Even if you're right sometimes, you're going to be wrong most of the time in the long run. And the more you have the strategy of just kind of hoping and praying, the less likely you're going to be successful in whatever you're trying to do. So the first thing is going inward, accepting responsibility for everything in your life and for the things that you want to accomplish, accepting the full responsibility for them, and then accepting full ownership of the decisions that you're going to make and the information that you're using to make those. and respecting this principle that it's only about how you respond. So you can pretty much immediately kill so much of the what ifs and maybes and the uncertainty and get down to the basics, the things that you know for sure, and the things that you can control. And then when you direct your focus there, everything is better. Your thinking is more clear. It's less emotional or not emotional at all. And you can actually reason up from things you know. You can reason up from first principles. You can reason up from facts. Anything that is based on a what if or a maybe is not a fact. It's a hypothetical. It's a hypothesis. This leads me to the second part of thinking clearly, thinking without emotion or removing emotions during thinking. One is the foundation. Two is connected to that foundation. If you don't take a me first ownership, it's my responsibility perspective, you will fall victim to a lot of negative thought patterns. You will blame other people. You will let go of your agency to actually do anything about your situation. This can stimulate learned helplessness. There's just a whole myriad of things that are not good with this kind of, thinking. And that's why when you focus on the things that you know for sure that you can build on top of, by merit of doing that, you remove emotion. They kind of go hand in hand. The more you focus on emotion, you're focusing on victim and blaming and external things outside of your control, the more you get caught up in what ifs and maybes and hypotheticals. But when you remove that and you say, okay, these are the facts, and then this is what I can do about these facts, and this is the strategy I'm going to take about things that I know aren't going to change. That is pretty much the foundation for thinking clearly. If you can do this, you will make better decisions faster and easier and without the stress and pain and the ruminating for weeks and days and nights on end, sleepless nights, etc., that most people go through because they don't have a clear understanding of how the brain works and they don't have a clear understanding of how even life works. There is too much energy spent on things outside of yourself. And when you do that, you pretty much are playing a game you can never win. And this leads me to the final point. This might not seem like it applies to thinking clearly, but oh, so it does. Ownership. Taking ownership of your responsibility to boil things down to the facts, to then remove emotion, and then to take full 100% ownership and responsibility to do something about it. There's no way to think clearly if you can't do this. Every single bit of emotion or negative thought pattern or negative self-talk or any of the gunk that we as humans engage in and that comes so naturally to us, all of that is ignoring the agency required to take full ownership for our situation and for our thoughts and our decisions. So when you take a first principles approach and then you remove your emotion and then you remind yourself or you focus on the fact that it's up to you and you alone, and you don't worry about what ifs and maybes or whatever, the only thing that you can do is make the best decisions you can based on these first principles and these things that you know for sure, and then reason up from there. And then this is where you really level up your thinking and your results in life. Then as you do and you get feedback, well, you can edit the doing. Because every time you do something and you get feedback, maybe something doesn't work, maybe somebody stands in your way, maybe there's this thing, that thing, whatever, then you refocus again on what you can do. You have this information. You absolutely can't move forward with this thing this way or whatever. So you say, what can I do then to go around this, through this, over this, under this, whatever? And you do this every step of the way. And this is how amazing lives are built. Personal responsibility, a focus on the foundational principles of the things that you know for sure, and then getting as much feedback in as fast as possible so that you can change and adapt to the things that you're learning as you are doing. This is the framework for thinking clearly. It's also a framework for an amazing life. So if you got some value out of this video, make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all those things if you want to. But more importantly, take some action with something that you learned today or maybe were reminded of. What is something in your life that you're caught up on? What are some negative thought patterns maybe you can kill? How can you take ownership? How can you focus on first principles and the things you know for sure? And ultimately, how can you think clearly by removing emotion so you can make better decisions faster and get more results faster? Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. I'm Colin Stucker, the Raw CEO. Thanks for watching. Hey, Colin here. Before I let you go, make sure you go over to Colin.coach to hop on the AM5 newsletter so you can get a list of all the shows as well as some of my best content from the week before. You can go to Colin.coach to get that now. If you'd like to support the show, you can go over to patreon.com/Colin Stuckert, and you can see some of the membership options, a small monthly donation to help support the work here, and join me in my quest to build better humans using big ideas, as well as promoting health through the Ancestral Mind podcast. I appreciate the support, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send me an email directly to colin@wildfoods.co. This show is also sponsored by Wild Foods Co. Real foods, superfood ingredients from small producers around the world. These are the products I use and trust on a daily basis. You can use code WILDCEO for 12% off your entire order over at wildfoods.co.